Okay, welcome back to the Arcade Veteran. Today we're going to talk about the Super Prologue 21, a recent purchase of mine. We're going to look at its history, going to do some cleaning and some repairs, just a few mods and then a quick test, and then we'll go on to do some of the actually important stuff and do some playing with it. Okay then, let's get started. The Prologue 21 multimedia karaoke system was released in Japan over 95 and 96 and manufactured by Nihon Columbia and published by Sega. The Sega Prologue 21 was an updated model of the Prologue 21 in 1994 and built with the Sega Saturn, offering new features like a harmonizer and internet connectivity to Sega's online delivery system and scoring. The system consists of many parts: the commander, the amplifier, the changer, the wireless microphone receiver, remote control and song navigator. The faults today we'll be dealing with are mainly concerning the commander unit. This is the unit I purchased from eBay quite recently. You notice that there was no power indicator on the unit and it was completely dead, nothing powered up at all. On opening up the system, when you've got no power, you tend to look around just to see what's going on first, make sure there's no charred black messes or anything obvious. Here I've removed the two power supply modules. This is the main board, this is the main power delivery board. You can see I've taken away the capacitors so I can have a better look round the system. Capacitors weren't faulty, but they did want changing. They're old, so they didn't need changing. This is the main board in the system. Contains the Sega Saturn. There goes the hard drive ribbon. There's the Sega Saturn chips there. I'll take this board out, have a bit of a closer look at the system. Like I say, here's the main board, there's the Sega chips, and if you can notice that there's the cartridge slot for the Sega Saturn. There's your main connectivity and your hard drive. You notice in that bottom left hand corner there is a room for a battery, which the system never actually got. So every time you restart this system you get prompted for the time and date. This is the CD drive to the left, the audio board in the middle there on the right hand side. The controller interface is on the left, and on the right there is the video processing board. They're all the boards ready back in the machine there, just on the stack. That's what it was like when I opened the system up. This is the power supply board. After I'd done some initial testing, I found that we'd got a problem with this diode. This diode was short circuit completely. So after replacing that and the capacitors, get the main chassis a bit of a clean out here, get rid of all the dust while I was in there, give it a bit of a birthday. The CD drive there and the power slides are back in the board itself. There we go. So initially we got the system power supply repaired and that restored power to the system, but unfortunately it wouldn't boot. All it did was give us a load screen on the front of the machine. I quickly noticed that listening to the hard drive I could hear it seeking, but I couldn't hear it spinning up. So I gave it's actually a SCSI drive. I gave it a slight knock, tried to G it back into life. We weren't having any of it. So as you can see in this, I've had to take the top off the hard drive to expose the platter, and I found that basically the platter was just stuck. So it was just a case of just freeing off that platter and allowing the system to spin up again, and hey presto, it all starts working perfectly. This is the system booting up. Once it's booted, nothing comes up on the screen. You have to press the button on the left hand side, the main power button, then the actual system starts to turn on properly, and then you're greeted with the BIOS screen there. This is the front screen, as you'll probably mostly recognise. It's the Saturn boot up screen from an original Saturn, nothing unusual. This machine's optical drive was dead. After I'd finished repairing all the machine and it did boot, obviously I couldn't play any games on it. And I just had a bit of a brainwave that I thought I'll just wonder if I'll give one of the ODEs a go. The mode's probably a bit big to fit inside this machine, but the Funria is perfectly sized to go in this, and they did a 20-pin model, so I checked the wiring, the pinouts were the same, so I decided to give it a go, and hey presto, it not only boots but it loads games perfectly, so absolutely over the moon. So the system lives again. This is just me playing around with some of the karaoke functions of the machine. Once you boot it up, you get this blue screen and you get this cycling of data, which is what's stored on the hard drive. We're just playing around with master volume there. But yeah, there are numbers by the songs that are stored on the machine, and you can input them via the buttons on the front of the machine or the remote control. Unfortunately, I don't have a remote control for it, so I just had to use the buttons on the front. This is just a quick overview of what's on the back. This is how I've got it connected. The composite side that it's connected to this little TV was enough, but later on when I plugged it into my bigger set, it really did need S-Video to crisp up the image. It was quite, as usual with composite, it's a bit naff. So this is the system booting into the karaoke functions. I'm just playing around with the karaoke functions, and eventually I will get one of the songs to play. And this is purely through the commander unit. None of the other parts of the system are actually active yet. So here I am punching in the numbers. I don't read Japanese, so it's a case of trial and error. I've worked out what some of the buttons do. So like I said, once you get it going, if you put it in wrong, it just goes back to the menu. But this is what it does bring up. It brings up this menu, then you press another button, and it then starts the actual karaoke song. And you all know what a karaoke song looks like. This is the screen you get, and it starts to read off the text. But obviously it's all in Japanese, so no good to me. The system was designed to live really in karaoke bars and things like that out in Japan. It's a huge unit. The CD changer is designed and can be modified to take up to 100 CDs and play video CDs, so it was quite universal. So it could play video CDs, it could play karaoke CDs, and it could also play Sega Saturn games. So it's quite a clever unit really, but by God is it heavy. That was just a shortened down version of it booting. Then there you can see me turning it on. Once it's actually booted the hard drive, you have to have physically turned that unit on. Once it's on, that's what you're presented with. That left hand drawer there is your Sega Saturn pop-out drive. That bit in the middle you'll see later on where that's the game controllers. There's your individual mic inputs and master volume, and they are your buttons for basically selecting what you want. This is the changer. That's the power button for the changer. That's the lock and main switch for the changer. Like I said, it carried up to 100 CDs, had two optical pickups in there, so you could load in more than one game at a time, or more than one. It didn't play Sega Saturns from the changer though. It only played video CDs and karaoke CDs and stuff like that. So this is the weirdest part of the machine. You have to undo these little Allen keys to get these little front things to drop down. Then that exposes the two Sega Saturn ports. It did have specialised controllers, but any Sega controller, Saturn controller will do. There's a little button there that you press, which I'm just about to press now. That brings up your standard. Nothing special. There's no special BIOS or anything. Standard Sega Saturn boot screen for the original Japanese version. You can see it's version 1. Because I've got the rear, it takes over the boot process and then brings up the menu, as you can see in the background. So I'm basically going to load games off an SD card. So first of all, we're going to try Daytona USA. One of the flagship titles for the Daytona, or it was supposed to be. Unfortunately, it wasn't really finished in time. You'll see, I don't know if you're not familiar with the Sega Saturn, this particular game did suffer with a large amount of pop-in and got a lot of criticism at the time. Having loved this from the arcade and own one of the arcade cabs myself, it was a no-brainer. I had to have it. So back in the day, I did actually purchase a Japanese Saturn so that I could play games early, because this machine came out a year before we got it in Europe, so I couldn't wait that long. I had to get it from Japan and import it, so I do still have my import Saturn now. Gameplay wise, I actually think it really plays really well. Sound reproduction, I think, is, even though the Saturn did have pretty good sound, the amount of sound processing in this unit I think does elevate it very, very slightly. over the standard Saturn. The sound is absolutely phenomenal. It's hard to really acknowledge that on a YouTube video, but the sound is brilliant coming from this machine. The actual speed, and it plays like a normal Saturn. I actually think it runs absolutely brilliantly. I don't know if it's my imagination, but whether it runs slightly better, I don't know. But anyway, we'll just sit back and enjoy me do a few laps on Daytona USA. As you can see there, this corner was particularly noticeable for popping and round by the crowd. The big chunks were popping in. When you compared this to the likes of Ridge Racer on the PS1, that's primarily why the system got a lot of criticism. The PS1 and Sony showed how it should be done, basically. Namco really did show what the PS1 was capable with that title. This should have been a standout title that absolutely blew everything out of the water, because it's, Daytona USA at the time was, well, I think still is, one of the highest grossing arcade machines ever made. So when they made a home conversion, you wanted it to live up to it. I think really, they, if I was going to criticise this game, I think what could they have done different? Maybe they could have reduced the cars, the number of cars on screen maybe a little bit, maybe slowed the game down a little bit, because it does play very nice and very quick, probably a little bit too quick for my taste sometimes. Maybe reduced a little bit of the detail just to stop that popping, but well, they've made their choice and that was what it is. Okay, I think that's final lap. Very clever ideas implemented into this game. Like you say, the shadows on the back of the car screen, the driving mechanics. I think it's all very well played out. There we go, number one.
Welcome to Victory Lane. You made it.
One thing that's missing from modern games, I think, is things like this. A victory lap that you can actually just sit back and enjoy. Nice little screen of the guys that made it. Brilliant. But I don't think we'll see the likes of these games again, We're just on the eve of the Gran Turismo release. And you just see how big modern games have got. The likes of this sort of little arcade shooter that you can drop onto for half an hour, I think, are long gone. So, I've had a go at House of the Dead now. Even though this Fenrir drive is capable of region-free gaming, these ROMs that are on the SD card are all Japanese ROMs. I just thought it would, considering there's no documented proof to say that that ODE was capable of actually working on the Super Prologue. I decided that it would be just safer, and it was one thing to knock off the list if it didn't work. So I decided to put on some Japanese ROMs rather than obviously English or USA. But it doesn't mean to say I can't revisit it and obviously put some English ROMs on and stuff like that. But games like this, game Daytona and that, you don't really need to understand the words. I've played them that many times. Everything's quite obvious what you've got to do. So I just thought it was from a compatibility perspective, I won't push my luck, and decided just to use the Jap ROMs. Again, one of these games that we'll probably never see again, House of the Dead. Not in this arcade sort of format anyway. Purely and simply, the games are too short and too hard to work in a home environment. But nonetheless, still classics in their own right, and very enjoyable to play. I'm glad they're all still about, really. And these ODE drive replacements are on the market, because if we think, probably back 5 years, it's not that long ago, that things like this wasn't available, and these machines would have been completely dead, or we would be much more difficult to get them going, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we've done some games. Now it's time for just a quick demo of the karaoke side on a bigger screen. So again, the system has to load back. Once you've been in the Sega mode, you press the button and it goes back into the karaoke mode, and it has to reload. It's quicker than the original, the first load in boot sequence, but it still has to load and go back into the menu system. So you can see that going up the screen there, and you type in those numbers. I'm not actually sure whether this is exactly how it works, but as you can see, when I actually finally type it in properly, you'll see that it actually does bring up the karaoke song. These songs are obviously, what I'm playing is predominantly what is on the hard drive, what has been loaded onto the hard drive. There were various ways to play this machine. You could play them, you could download them from Sega. This machine, one of the differences between this machine and the original machine is that, like you said, the connectivity back to Sega, and you could download songs and put them onto the hard drive. You could transfer songs from obviously the CDs and put them onto the hard drive. Like this machine standalone was really just meant for internet connectivity and download and save songs, and you play the karaoke songs from there. The changer side of it added, like you say, up to 100 karaoke discs or video CDs. So a very versatile machine. This machine was really created in response to growing competition that Sega were getting out in Japan. As we all know, karaoke is one of the massive things out in Japan, and Sega wanted to be at the front of it, so Sega offered so much in this machine. So this is the Super Prologue 21, a repair and demonstration. Really enjoyed making this, and fantastic that I managed to get this machine running and repaired, so really chuffed. So thank you for watching if you've got this far, and we'll catch you again in the next video. Bye for now.